Hello there! Welcome to my channel. This is going to be the first of a four-part series looking into the new reMarkable Paper Pro. This is a device that was just announced in the beginning of September of 2024. It's just got my hands on it, and we're going to start this video with an unboxing, and then we're going to move on then to kind of doing a visual tour of the software. In the next video, we'll start in the review process after that, including battery life and other factors, and then we'll end the series with a final review with all the pros and cons of the device. So it all is starting with this video here. Before we get into the unboxing itself, I wanted to say a few things to kind of lay the groundwork, and we'll start off by just talking about reMarkable. For those that don't know, reMarkable is one of the biggest players in this space. They've done tremendous work over the years and really kind of helping to establish this marketplace to what it is today. I would argue that in terms of brand recognition within e-note-taking, there's nobody bigger than either Amazon Kindle or reMarkable. I mean, they kind of stand alone. And of course, we know with Amazon, it's because of their association with their web services, which are well known and go back to the 90s. But in reMarkable's case, it's entirely because of the devices they've released. And the Pro is only the third that they've released since the inception of that company. They released the reMarkable 2, and now they're releasing the Pro. I should point out that while the original reMarkable is no longer available, both the reMarkable 2 and of course the Pro are still available for sale. Okay, so let's look at how the reMarkable Pro, which we can see on this graphic on the left side, the RMPP, compares to their previous model, the reMarkable 2. One of the biggest distinctions is the screen size, which is at 11.8 inches on the Pro versus the traditional 10.3 on the reMarkable 2. And they seem to have achieved that mostly through making the device taller as opposed to wider. And you can see the width between the two isn't that different. The PPIs are roughly the same, but a much larger battery on the Pro model, much more storage, and then a faster processor and twice the RAM. So a lot of kind of nice specifications for this device. Some people have been disappointed that it's not a 300 PPI device, that the processor isn't a little bit beefier, but still, compared to where they came from with the 2, it is a nice upgrade. We're going to go into talking about the hardware, so I'm not going to say too much about it, other than the stylus is a capacitive stylus, meaning that it's a charged stylus, and traditional Wacom EMR styluses, kind of like the ones that are used on the reMarkable 2 and other devices, will not operate on this device. So you have to use their proprietary device that charges via the magnetic connection. So that's just something to be aware of. So if you have a reMarkable 2 or you have another device, those styluses won't work here. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about pricing. I put a grid here to show kind of the ranges that are available. The base model comes in at $579, and that's the device and their basic stylus. If you wanted to go for the stylus with an eraser at the end, that's an additional $50. And if you wanted to start adding in the folios, then that's going to be at $89 all the way up to $229. The $229 being their keyboard folio. So, and they have a number of options on the folio. So there is a range there, and folios that are in the middle of that range. So the minimum is $579 if you don't get a case, and the maximum you're going to spend is $829. But I should point out that in both of these situations, these are before taxes. So if you're throwing in a folio and you consider taxes, you're probably going to be spending at least in the early 700s on that device, even though it is technically possible to buy the device without a folio. So I just want to point that out. In addition to that, as a reminder, reMarkable does have a Connect service, and here's kind of a graphic that they use to talk about that service and what's provided. I'm being a bit reductionist, but the main feature is their online note storage and then how you can interact with those notes. That seems to be the marquee feature of that. it's $2.99 per month, or just under $30 a year for that service. So that is a paid service, which is unique in the e-note-taking space. This is the only subscription plan that I'm aware of, at least as of this filming. Okay, so having said that and laid the groundwork, let's get right into the unboxing and start taking a look at what we're getting with the reMarkable Paper Pro. All right, well, here it is. We've got it here in the box. Just a couple of quick things about the box. We won't go over this in excruciating detail, but a couple interesting things. The first thing, of course, is you do see this kind of nice little purple accent line here at the edge, so kind of a subtle cue to the fact that this is a color e-ink device. But also the touch rather of the box is just a little bit gritty, and I think trying to give that impression of paper as opposed to just some sort of regular box. So kind of a nice little touch, I guess. Let's go ahead and open this up from the side. Got a little pull tab over here. Open that up. And I'm just going to go ahead and get this out of here. All right, there we go. So just have an all black box there. Let's go ahead and pull this tab. And there is our device. Open that up. There we are. And also in the box, we have a booklet of paperwork. Let's get this out of here. Oh my goodness, just a bunch of paperwork that I'm not going to read. And then we have, I think will be, yes, our charging USB-C to USB-C cable. So that's everything that comes in this particular box. Go ahead and put that aside. All right, and then we'll go ahead and adjust that lighting in just a second to make it a little easier to see. But before we do, we also have the book folio. Got a little cutout. I got the burgundy, I think they call it the mosaic weave. So that's kind of cool. We've also got the pull tab here. Oh no. Okay, had a little problem with the pull tab, but that's okay. And again, we've got a little bit of a box within the box here. And there is our cover. All right, so I think we've got indentations here for the back here. Let's go ahead and get that in there. It's a nice magnetic fit. Very good. Close that up. And then we've got our flap over here, which is interesting. It's got an indentation. And leaves a little bit of space for your stylus right there. Speaking of the stylus, we have that as well. I have the basic marker. We'll go ahead and use the pull tab on that. Right, again, we find ourselves in the box within a box. A lot of documentation. Here we are. And then we have tips. Let's take a look at those, because those are different. These are different tips than what we're used to with reMarkable. Okay. They really have multiple boxes here. So there we go. So you can see the tips there. They're tiny little tips, as opposed to what we're used to with reMarkable, which is more like this, where you have little tips with long shafts. These are just little tiny tips, and you can see they're angled in such a way, or I don't know if you can make this out, where you would insert them by pushing down on the empty stylus. I'll have to verify that, but I think that's how they're oriented. So you would load a new one by pushing into each of these grooves. All right, very good. Okay, so again, here's the back of the stylus. You can see the flap can be set into this groove right here. You put your stylus there in the upper side, turn this over, and it connects a lot easier with the stylus in place. So real quick comment about the hardware. I'll go ahead and pry this out. One of the things I was wondering about was the side of the device, and it's kind of hard to see here, but there's a groove along the side. My initial impressions about that is that it's supposed to be in this design that's, and according to the marketing, was supposed to resemble like holding on to a stack of paper. I don't get that vibe at all. It's not a problem that there's this groove here. You know, it looks fine visually, but I don't think it really adds a ton. The one thing I am a little concerned about, and we'll get a sense of this more over time, and you probably wouldn't necessarily be holding onto the device like this for long periods of time because it is fairly heavy. We'll do the weigh-in in a little bit. But it is a little, it's not a thick device, but it's a little thick to not have rounded edges. And I'm wondering if that will press into my hand over time. It doesn't feel great holding on to it, but it's not terrible either. So I'll have to get a sense of working with the device and whether that's really a thing or not. But that is an initial concern that I do have. The USB-C port is here in the bottom. There's nothing else in the bottom or on the sides. You do have the power button here on top. That does bother me a little bit. I really don't like having the USB port on one side and the power button on the alternate side. I would prefer they would be on diagonal. And the reason why I mention that is that when I connect my device, I often brace it in the opposite side. So connecting it this way, you can accidentally push the power button in that process. So that's a design feature that carries over from the reMarkable 2, and I don't like it. It's not the worst thing in the world, of course, but I really think they would have been better off putting the power button over here, or putting the USB over here. Not a fan of that design. So a couple little issues I see right off the bat with the device, but again, just first impressions. We'll see if these really matter as I'm using the device more. But putting those things aside, the build quality feels pretty good. I've gone ahead and kind of pressed around. There's no creaking, which you would expect from a reMarkable product. And if we look at the back, pretty straightforward, a nice sheen on the back. You do notice we've got some pins here. Presumably that's for the keyboard folio. If we focus just on the stylus, again, this is, if just so you know, this is a capacitive stylus, meaning it's charged. And the charge is through the magnetic connection on the device. So presumably, as long as you're storing the stylus against the device, which most people would, you're not going to have to think about the charging. But if you store your stylus separately, then you do run the risk of the charge eventually running out and it not being available. It does come to a little bit more of what I like to call a crayon type of a tip, as you can see there. This one is the normal marker and not the Pro. It doesn't have an eraser feature, but it does have nice little branding there. And pretty good feel in the hand. I do have the Pro version of the reMarkable pen that you can use with the reMarkable 2. And I didn't like that pen, mainly because the texture of the device, while initially feeling really good in the hand, it was difficult to grip, and I would find, also this is not a particularly thick stylus, so I would find I would have to strain more to hold my grip. I don't sense I'm going to have that issue with this one. This is a nice smooth surface, it's easy to grip. I don't feel like I'm going to have to put any additional tension in order to hold on and use the stylus. But we'll know for sure as I'm starting to use the device, but this is an optimistic first impression on this stylus. Okay, let's do a quick weigh-in here. The stated weight is 525 grams, and yeah, that's pretty much what we're coming up with, 524. The stylus is weighing in at about 12 grams, so kind of a lighter stylus. Normally you see them around 14 grams, although there is a margin of error on this particular scale, so just a hair on the lighter side. And then the cover is going to come in at 232 grams. So if we put the whole package together, go ahead and get that connected, then our total weight is going to come out to 772 grams, give or take a few grams. So that is your weigh-in. Okay, one last commentary on the hardware. You know, the cover, this being a fabric cover, has definitely a nice texture to it. So you can hear what that sounds like. It feels fairly premium. Let's go ahead and get this thing going. So, and I'm going to go ahead and press the power button, and we're going to get started for the first time. Got our message up here that it's starting. Nice, they're starting to integrate more color. I can tell you at first glance, this is a pretty white background, which is interesting because it looks darker on some of the Reddit posts that I've seen. And we'll talk about that. We'll do the comparison to the reMarkable too. But by itself, feels fairly white. Smartphone or computer. I have that. Go next. Touch the marker. All right. It looks like we have a battery indicator there. It wasn't particularly charged. This is what a digital paper screen refresh looks like. Huh. Okay, I've never seen a refresh look like that. I'm going to be curious to see what it actually looks like. Let's do that refresh again. Okay, I'm sorry. This is the this is the refresh. That's fine. I thought they were saying that the image in this picture was like it was a bunch of stars were going to appear, and that's not the experience. This is the experience. Yeah, that's absolutely normal, of course. We'll go ahead and connect to Wi-Fi. I'll go ahead and cut the camera and put my credentials in. All right, we're connected to Wi-Fi. Let's just keep going. See if there's any type of update. Let's go ahead and check that out. Not unusual to have a firmware update when a device first arrives, so looks like we have one here too. So we'll just kind of let that happen. I may cut ahead if this just takes too long because it's not that interesting to watch an update in action. Okay, we're back here again, and it's asking me to update and restart again. So we'll go ahead. Nope, we're good. Okay, very good. So there was only one update. We're going to pair it to a reMarkable account. Okay, so here we are pairing to my existing reMarkable account. I just used my phone basically and logged into my account, and that was it. So we're paired. I'm going to go ahead and skip the passcode. I don't need that. All right, I'm right-handed. And we are good to go. Syncing all my files there. And the device is fully charged. And there's quick settings here. Okay, so there you have the Wi-Fi. What is this? Okay, screen share. Cool. So this is basically sharing your screen on a Wi-Fi network. I'm presuming that you have to use it to the app. Okay, I was going to say, normally you see this using a window browser, but here you have to use their desktop app, which is fine. Okay, excellent. And then here you've got airplane mode, and then this is the front lighting. So it looks, I think it's on now. Yeah, so that's off. And then this is front lighting all the way on. There's no color control, I don't believe. Let me hold that down and see if, nope. So let's just take a look at the different levels. Like so. Kind of hard to see. This is a well-lit environment. I've got the ring light bearing right down on it. So this is a pretty subtle front lighting, and it's not kind of sticking out. In fact, let me go ahead and turn off this ring light, and we'll get a better sense of how lit this is. So we'll let the camera adjust, and let's go ahead and go down 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. and then back all the way up. Ooh, that is a really subtle front lighting. Interesting. I'll have to try that in different environments and see how that goes. We'll go ahead and turn it off for now. We'll turn that ring light back on, get a nice light going on. Okay, let's start to play around here. I'm going to go ahead and we'll just start a new notebook, and let's just go with lines and give it a new name, like so. Create the notebook. Okay, there we are. All right, so let's start off actually by getting a sense of what this device sounds like. I'm going to go ahead and put this up to the microphone. Wow, that is a fairly pronounced sound. Very interesting. Now let's go ahead and compare that then to the reMarkable 2. And I'm actually using the book's Stylus here. Okay, so here's the reMarkable 2. That's a much quieter sound. So reMarkable 2 Pro. Very interesting. Yeah, much. This, I would say that the reMarkable 2 is a little tinnier. This has got a little more bass in it. Very interesting. Almost a little bit cartoonish in terms of the sound, but I'm actually not complaining about that. I actually kind of like it. That's my initial impression anyway. I don't know if it actually sounds like paper. That's what I mean by cartoonish. And I'm not getting any type of resistance on the screen, which is normal. Most screens are really about the auditory effect. And that's pretty much true here. But this definitely has a distinctive sound. I don't know if I find this sound particularly, much better than other devices that I've used, but it's acceptable. It's perfectly fine. Yeah. Very good. Now that we have the reMarkable 2 and the Pro side by side, let's make a few quick comparisons here. And boy, we can sure see, let me see if I can get the glare out there. You can sure see how much darker the Pro is versus the reMarkable 3. And this is what we're seeing in a lot of Reddit posts. Let's go ahead and do the drop down bar and get that front lighting on and see if that bridges the gap. It's interesting. With the front lighting on now, you can kind of tell there's a little bit of a slightly yellowish light that's coming through. It certainly doesn't make the screen look as white as the original or the previous reMarkable 2. So curious about that. And then you can also get a sense here now of the size of the two devices. Let me go ahead and stack these on top of each other. So I'll go ahead and align the corners. And you can see the Pro, get that into frame, is just a little bit wider in terms of the physical device, but certainly a lot taller. But if we compare the screens, let's go ahead and align the screen this way. You can see that you actually get about almost an inch. My finger from here to my crease there is about an inch. So you get about an inch to the right. And in terms of the height, you're getting about a little more than an inch that way, just a hair more than an inch that way. So that is a comparison of the Pro versus its predecessor. Okay, now here's a comparison I'm super interested in, and probably be unique to my channel. We've got, of course, the reMarkable Pro here, but right next to it, I've got the Bigme Galley. And, why am I putting such a small device next to a much larger one? Well, these are the only two devices, as of this filming, that have ever been released with the Gallery 3 technology. This was released a little over a year ago, almost a year and a half ago, actually. And of course, this is just freshly released this month. And one of the curious things about the galley was that the behavior of the pen strokes was really weird. There was some really weird behavior. And I'm curious to what degree reMarkable, and I guess the folks at e-ink, were able to kind of resolve some of those issues. So let's go ahead and do a little test and see what that looks like. I'm just going to do some scribbles. And we're going to start with just a black. We're going to do ball pen on both. And we'll go ahead and actually, let's take a look at that thickness. We've got like a medium thickness. That sounds good. All right, no issues here with the black. So we'll go ahead and go over here to the galley. And okay, we've got a medium line thickness there. Great. Let me go ahead and see if I can get my hand out of the way. Actually, let me put this on top. That might be better. And I'm going to go ahead and fill this in. So no problem. Galley could handle black just fine, and so can the reMarkable. So nothing notable there. So far, so good. Let's go ahead, and then we'll go to blue. All right, switch styluses. Let's do a blue line here. Okay, very good. Oh, that's interesting. It just rendered. So let's see what happens here. We'll pick blue. There we go. Let's see what this looks like. Okay, so that rendered. Yeah. So you can kind of see that this renders a little bit, this comes a little bit like a light blue, and then it renders into a dark blue, but otherwise the drawing doesn't seem to have any unusual behavior. Oh, hello, I must have accidentally erased my lines. So this actually starts as a pretty dark blue and actually becomes a little bit lighter. That's interesting. Okay, so similar behavior, but the opposite effect. If I write this down, it'll become a darker blue, and then it renders to a pretty good-looking blue. And then if I do the same thing here on the galley, it actually starts as a lighter blue. Oops. Starts as a lighter blue, but then it eventually refreshes. If we can get it to refresh. There we go. Then it becomes darker. A similar behavior, but it goes in two different directions. Okay, let's keep going. Let's see what it's like to do magenta. All right, here we go. Okay, yeah, this is very similar. So this has what I call a snaking feature. Is as I'm drawing the line, there's like a trailing line that follows. See if you can make that out. Although it's pretty fast in this one. And then it does render as well. It starts off a little lighter, I guess. Or is it darker? I can't tell. It's a little bit lighter, almost a touch orangey, and then it becomes magenta. Okay, let's compare that then to how the Big Me Galley performs. And there we go, with magenta. So to see the same snaking effect, you can see that there. So it's identical, actually. I don't see any difference in that. Let's go ahead and do that refresh. And then it becomes much lighter as a result of that refresh. Actually, it's pretty similar to what we have with the Pro. So I don't see a tremendous difference. Let's put those side by side so we can get a better look at it. This screen is a touch darker, I think, than the reMarkable. Did I leave the front lighting on? No. Good. Okay. And I don't think there's any front lighting on here either. No. All right. Excellent. Okay, so the behavior actually is pretty similar. It was slightly different than the blue. Let me click on one more, and we'll go with cyan. Actually, let's do green. Let's do a green. And Okay, a little bit of a snaking on the green. Ooh, it renders much lighter. So it starts off darker, and then it renders into a nicer green. Okay, and then with the Big Meat Galley, we have, whoops. They must have an auto sleep function that I'm triggering with putting the device on there. So let's go ahead and do the green here. You know, actually not as much snaking. And it also generates a lighter green, although I kind of like the reMarkable's green a little bit better. It's a little more distinctive to me. But I don't see any ghosting, I'm sorry, any snaking. Did we have snaking here? Yeah, okay. Wow, it's really interesting. So they're not exact, but I'm seeing similar attributes and how things are being written out. I can tell you with the galley, I found that really drove me nuts, the behaviors of the certain pen styles. I do think that these are rendering just a little bit nicer, in my opinion, than the galley ones. Let's see if we can put those side by side, like so. But they're not terribly different. Of course, working with the galley is just a massive. It was not a good device, and so you can tell with how sluggish it is, and you don't have those issues here with reMarkable. But my takeaway here, though, is I'm a little surprised to see not a ton of difference in terms of the behavior of the writing. Still getting some snaking, still having that rendering. And it'll be interesting to see how the reMarkables just calibrated their overall experience, if it's more forgivable here than it was on the galley. And that may turn out to be the case. The galley was not a good device as a writing, except for black. Black actually was fine. But interesting. Okay, I wanted to see how the technology differed, and actually it's a little bit different, but not as much as I would have expected. So it'll be curious to see how I feel about that over time. Okay, so I've got this color sheet that I went ahead and downloaded onto the device, and I'm going to go ahead and compare that to an actual piece of paper, and we'll get a sense of how accurate and how colorful the colors are. I will point out that there is apparently some adjustment settings, like for example a contrast setting, that's available for PDFs. I'm not playing with that now. I'm just going to put this out here and see what it looks like, and we'll compare that to an actual printed version on a laser printer. Now, obviously, the first thing you're going to notice is that this is a much more muted, the device is a much more muted color than the piece of paper, which is very bright. Let's see if we can affect that at all by turning on the front light. There we go. All right. Let's recenter that. There we go. Okay. So it helps pop a little bit, but no, there's definitely a huge difference between a white piece of paper and the screen. What's curious about the color... Let's go with this by color. So we've got the blacks here, and does pretty well. This looks like much more of a black than this. This is starting to move into kind of a gray, rather. And this is still remaining black, whereas here, this starts to fade into a lighter gray, and this starts kind of changing color, actually, and then it virtually disappears here, and there's still a shade here. Okay, red, pretty good here, pretty good here. Again, muted, but still again, you don't see a lot of difference in where here it gets a little bit lighter. It kind of is the same between the second and third options. This one's okay, and then it blanks out. Magenta. You can see these three, a lot of these first three bars actually look almost identical to each other, and it might be my angle. But then it fades, and so it disappears. The only time you can kind of see anything is down here below, where there's a little bit of a box down there. And then the yellow, of course, completely fades away. And you can see the other colors accordingly. So, you know, it's not as vibrant, obviously, both in terms of the page coloring and the colors. But again, remember where we're coming from. We're coming from e-ink that traditionally has been black and white, and you know, color is still in its infancy, even though it's taken years to get to this point. You know, you don't expect LCD-like colors. But anyway, this gives you a sense of how well the technology currently is at reproducing those colors. Okay, now let's take a look then at how this technology, the latest version of Gallery 3, compares to Kaleido 3. Okay, so here we have obviously the Pro here on the right using the Gallery 3. On the left, we have the Books Note Air 3C, and this is using Kaleido 3. So now we've got the top two e-ink color technologies going head to head, and kind of interesting results. The Kaleido 3, of course, is coming across as darker, and that's the result of the color film. But I'm seeing a little more subtlety in some of the gradients. Like you can see these have, you know, you can definitely see the steps where here you can't see it till you get to here. The yellows don't look particularly good on the Kaleido 3 device. Much better over here, even though there's no gradient. Green's not too bad. Definite gradient. Here's no gradient until you get to here. The blues here are quite faded. And there's not a ton of gradient there either, actually. No gradient until you get to here, but the blues look much better. Not sure what this color is supposed to be. It's a mixture of cyan and magenta. Blue. It's supposed to be blue. So you can definitely see it's faint and it becomes kind of purplish over here on the Kaleido 3. But over here it looks almost kind of black. And again, not as much of a gradient. You've got magenta there. You've got some definite gradient. Not here. I think the red's a little bit bolder here. Not as much gradient. These are actually kind of similar in terms of how they're handling gradiency, if that is a word. Although that you can see in that fourth box has got that weird kind of diagonal. It's almost like a flag, which you don't have here. You've got a little bit better of color reproduction there. Both reds are good. This is obviously more of a truer red over here. And then you can see the black, which again, same deal. More gradiency here, but better color representation here, particularly at the top of the bars. So that's a comparison of Kaleido and Gallery 3. Let's go ahead and turn on front lighting on each and see how that changes the experience. I'm just going to go cold because that's pretty much as close as you get to warm lighting. Oh, we do have the lighting on. I forgot I didn't turn it off. Okay. So yes, with... let's go ahead and refresh the screen. Okay, so now with the front lighting on, you can pretty much still see that, that same kind of gradient effect a little bit better this way. The colors are a bit better. The yellows aren't quite as pale, but still not as good as the Gallery 3 screen. And here you see kind of the red and magenta kind of look the same. I don't see a lot of variation here, where here they're clearly two different colors. So yeah, even with the front lighting on, you just see better colors representation over here, but you see better gradation over here. And again, my apologies if I just completely made up that word, but hopefully you understand what I mean. Definitely the front lighting on a device like the Note Air 3C is much brighter than this device, which has it on full. Let's go ahead and turn that off. Yeah, it's a very subtle. That's why I had forgotten that I had turned on the front lighting. It's not tremendously different. It's definitely something it feels like to me like it was designed for really low light environments, like you're reading in your bed and you just need just a little bit of front lighting. That's what this is trying to do, where you get much more of a range here with the Note Air 3C. Anyway, that's a comparison of how Gallery 3 handles color versus Kaleido 3 device. All right, so let's kind of sum up that what we've learned today, in just kind of this quick unboxing and just overview of the device, and just a little bit of an exploration and how it handles color. My initial impression, I was a little worried about the device being, not being wider instead of being taller. Like, I really wanted the real estate more off to the side. And we'll see how that plays out. I was a touch concerned about it, but right now I'm kind of feeling like this actually might be pretty good. So I'm looking forward to doing additional work on the device and getting a feel for how much of that real estate this device is giving you. And I'm cautiously optimistic based on what I'm seeing so far. Of course, it's definitely taller. We're going to have extra rows. That's fine. But will I feel constrained, as I sometimes do on 10-inch devices? We'll see, but that potential is definitely there. The hardware on the device looks really solid. I don't have any particular concerns about it, other than, again, trying to hold it in the hand. I do wonder if that might kind of dig in a little bit as holding it. Of course, if you're holding it with two hands, I don't think that would be a concern. So it may not be a thing, but it's something I'll be watching out for. The very kind of the setup process was fairly smooth. You saw all those files load pretty quickly, so that's a really smooth process with Connect. So that's great. The pen feels pretty good, easy to write with. The latency looks really good. So that's wonderful. It's consistent too, which I think is actually more important than latency after a point. I really need consistency. As long as I've got the latency is good enough, then that consistency then drives it home. This seems to do that. So I'm pretty bullish on that. And so my initial impressions overall, generally positive. Of course, I'll have to spend time with this device. I'll have to dig into it. It's going to take me a week or two to really start to have an opinion about it. But so far, not too many red flags, and there's certainly a number of aspects that are pretty positive. And again, another thing I'll be looking at is, does the behavior of the colors as I'm writing bother me? My initial impression, maybe not. I was a little concerned that if it did have that kind of snaking behavior, that it might be something that kind of rubs me the wrong way. But because it's so snappy, I'm not sure this is going to bother me like it bothered me with the Big Meat Galley. I still would prefer not having that snaking, and I don't like the rendering. I wish it would just draw the way it's supposed to draw the first time. So those aren't great things, but they're not bothering me to the degree that I thought they might. So again, that's just my first impression, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, next video, we're going to go into just a virtual tour of looking at all the features of writing notes and looking at PDFs. And that's really not going to be a review. That's just going to be, what can this device do? And we'll go over most of those features then. And that'll be the next video. So until then, I'll see you next time.